official hot read, though, is a Philadelphia pass catcher. I'm going to go with Dallas Goedert, over 45.5 receiving yards on the game. And really, this is actually kind of a recycled pick from a pick I almost made going into this game. I looked hard at Dalton Kincaid props going into this game. I ended up not playing him. I think we saw why. He couldn't get on the field. He got the really big drop on the defining play of the season. So I did not trust the tight ends there. Dallas Goedert is someone to trust. Kansas City allowed the most yards to tight ends on the season. Goedert today had 7 catches, 85 yards. Last 3 games before that, 56 yards, 47 yards, 55 yards, 4 catches in each one of those games. So that's 4 straight games. He's gone over this, just barely in one of them, and not in a huge way in all of them. But I think he's going to continue to get those looks. Here's some tight end lines the Chiefs allowed this season. First game of the season, likely 9 catches, 111 yards. Mike Gesicki, 91 yards. Kittle, 92. K. Dotton, 77. Brock Bowers, 10 for 180. Freiermuth, 7 for 60. The Chiefs have allowed, in the regular season, 45 receiving yards or more to a tight end in 11 out of the 17 games. So 65% hit rate to basically what we need on this number here. So I like Dallas Goedert over on the receiving yards. And I realized as I was reading off those stats on those guys, those tight ends are all catching like 6, 7, 8, up to 10 passes. We might come back on a receptions escalator here. I don't see a lot of escalator numbers for Goedert yet, but the Chiefs have allowed 2 tight ends, 7, 7, 8, 9, and 10 catches. And I could see a world, especially if I end up on the Chiefs, where the Eagles are kind of in a trailing game script and we get some sort of dump off to Goedert stuff underneath. I could see him getting a bunch of receptions that way. So for now, over 45.5 receiving yards, Dallas Goedert. Make sure to get that one now. I do think that line will go up, and we may end up on a receptions escalator for him as well. And that's the Super Bowl hot read.
All right, let's turn this into a Dallas Goedert podcast at the moment. So we're going to spend 1 minute here. I will give you a stat. Stucky tweeted this out earlier. So he's now gone. He had 7 receptions for 85 yards in this game. He's gone over his receptions prop in 9 straight playoff games. So if he gets 4 receptions in the Super Bowl, Goedert would join a really exclusive list of players with 4+ receptions in 10 straight playoff games. We're talking Kelsey's and Edelman's and Welker's and, Jerry Rice, like a crazy list, except he's also on the list just with Kelsey if he does it in terms of tight ends, which is super impressive in itself. There is an reception escalator available here. So they got smart. A bunch of us bet over 3.5 receptions for the NFC Championship game. It is now at 4.5 juiced, but 6 is plus 220, 7 4-1, 8 about 8-1. So those are the options at the moment, just to make you aware. But yeah, Goedert's been a perfect blanket for a quarterback that, aside from today, and I think we all liked A.J. Brown in that spot, he wasn't doing a great job at passing to his wideouts, which made Goedert a game script non-dependent, right? Like winning, losing didn't really matter. He was kind of available. So I think Goedert's a good pick. Do you remember? I believe he opened last week really low, like 34s, 35s, and then closed low 40s. So that 45 number feels like in line with, a little bit low, having a great performance. And then I think it's going to close in the 50s. So I think you're going to get a good number there.
Yeah, I do too. That's why I want to grab this one now, because I agree. I think we probably approach or hit the 50s. One last one I saw tweeted out, I think from Doug Kazarian, maybe over at ESPN. 12-1 for overtime at DraftKings. 2 overtimes the last 8 Super Bowls. Remember, that was the story for so many years. We've never had an overtime in the Super Bowl. 2 in the last 8. 5 of the last 8 have been 1-score games. And that's the Chiefs. 1-score games are their specialty. So do we get overtime here? That's just a fun one. Like, that's certainly not a best bet sort of thing. But my line right now, part of the reason I'm not on a spread here, my model makes this Chiefs minus 0.75. That's how close this is. These are my number 1 and number 2 teams in my model, have been for much of the season, even as high as I was on the Ravens. So when the model is that close on a neutral, 12-1 on overtime, just a kind of a fun Super Bowl bet. And look, I'll tell you right now, whatever we get to, when we come back for our next time recording for our Best Bets episode, we will have fun bets for the Super Bowl. So I will come up with all sorts of fun, goofy, wild long shots. Man, I love the cross sport props. and like all the wonky lines they make up, like the Premier League goals in the one game against the Super Bowl, rushing attempts by some random backup running back. Like, I love all that stuff. Chance for us to kind of dig in across the board. Yeah, you can better believe I'll have some goofy stuff for us when we get to our best bets again for that one.
Yeah, there's going to be a lot of props out there. Like, will what happened in the first Super Bowl also happen in this Super Bowl? Like, will
Yeah,
the score be this? There's going to be all, especially when we get these matchups again. And I think there's going to be a lot of Barkley stuff, especially with
for
that line
sure.
in the 114 range. And his anytime is already like it's minus 190. It looks like at the moment. So, I mean, that's going to be a part of a lot of different things. I mean, that's to me what the interesting thing about this Super Bowl is you have a rusher in the game that I just don't think we're used to. And I just looked this up. Last 100-yard rusher in the Super Bowl. Quick, do you actually know who it is? Because I wouldn't have gotten this.
Last 100-yard rusher.
I'm putting you on the spot here.
I'm man, I'm going too far back, but I'm shooting with Sean Alexander.
Yeah, so it's not, because I never would have remembered this guy, but it was Damian Williams for the Chiefs in that 2020 game. So,
Wow.
but just to prove a point with this line of 114 for Saquon, so Damian Williams had 104. Before that, it was Marshawn Lynch, 2015 with 102. Then Frank Gore, 2013 with 110. So to prove a point, no guys hit 120 since Michael Pittman in 2003. So
Wow.
this line of 114 and a half is really pretty historical when you think about when we get to the Super Bowl and kind of when we get to crunch time and butt tight time, and how many of these players actually go this high in terms of yardage. So pretty crazy nonetheless. But I think that's good for the matchup here. I don't know if I have too much else. Do you have anything else here, Brandon?
Yeah, I mean, I think just relating to what you just said, worth mentioning too, we're going to talk, I'm sure, about Super Bowl MVPs, and we'll come back to that. You and I will both be on the Favorites podcast as well. We said this before, the MVP and non-quarterback, you wanted an Eagle here. So I think that everyone's going to be looking for who's the non-quarterback you want from the Eagle if you want a Super Bowl MVP. Well, the obvious choice is Saquon Barkley, but I'm going off the top of my head here. I believe Terrell Davis was the last MVP running back in the Super Bowl. Like, I think it has not happened this century. And that fits with what you're saying. Like, if you're not topping 120 yards, how much you're going to have to do in order to be able to get the Super Bowl MVP doing that. I think David Williams would have had a pretty good case the year that he had it, but then it's Patrick Mahomes is on the team. So it's just going to default to Patrick Mahomes getting the MVP. So I think, to me, MVP thoughts, has Mahomes won it enough, a la Tom Brady, that maybe the voters kind of get bored with it and give it to somebody else if it's the Chiefs? And is that Kelsey? Is it Xavier Worthy? Is Xavier Worthy? Maybe you get some run plays or a kick return where it's not a Mahomes type play. Could that be a way that someone gets that? With the Eagles, who's the non-quarterback option? Or is it that it's always the quarterback and Jalen Hurts becomes the value because Saquon is getting bet and AJ and Devontae are getting bet and that sort of thing? So I think that will be a fun conversation. And yeah, we've got 2 weeks to cover it. We will have picks on everything. We'll have Super Bowl MVP articles up. I will have an article coming up soon, I think probably sometime this week. A year ago at this time, this first non-Super Bowl week, before we get to the big week, I said, okay, who is next year's Chiefs? Who is next year's 49ers? Who is next year's Ravens at the time? And out of that article, I said my favorite Super Bowl bet at the time, well, I had two of them. One of them was the Jets. Did not work out for me. One of them was the Eagles, 22-1. And that's where
Well
I'm sitting
done.
right now, is on an Eagles 22-1 ticket from January 30th a year ago, and on a Chiefs 16-1 ticket with the 1 seed from before the season. Pretty good way to play the Super Bowl if you just cash 16-1 or 22-1 either way. But the Eagles 22-1, that's a ticket you never were going to get by the time we got to the season. So we'll get into that this week as well. We'll probably have some of that stuff as we get to our Super Bowl best bets next time. I think that's it from my end. I'm excited to dig into this and learn more about the matchup.
Yeah, and just to answer your question, Mahomes, the Super Bowl MVP odds are out. Mahomes plus 105 is the favorite. Interesting that he's plus 105, and the Chiefs are minus 132 on the money line to win the game. So you can kind of see the spread difference there between the money line and him winning the award. It is also funny. So Saquon's 2 at plus 280 and Hurts is 3 at plus 370. So I'm interested to look back in history and see how many times quarterback wasn't 1-2, or I guess if the spread was really large in the game, you have another player there. But it's interesting to see a player over the quarterback on the same team.
Yeah. By the
So
way,
we can talk. Yeah.
our producer David Payne says he wants Cooper DeJean Super Bowl MVP. So we'll put that pick in for him. Hot read from
200 to 1.
David. Cooper
Perfect.
DeJean.
200 to 1. That's
Good.
great. And we can sprinkle on Dallas Goedert, 90 to 1 to win Super Bowl MVP.
Why not?
Because, if he's going to do it, he might as well go the distance.